Lumen point. Let's begin the breakdown.
Today, we're going to dive into the story of a massive scientific breakthrough. We're talking about a 50-year-old mystery, a puzzle so complicated that people called it biology's last theorem. And believe it or not, it all comes down to these tiny little machines that run our entire world. So let me ask you a question. What if the world's biggest problems, I'm talking climate change, curing diseases, all of it, what if they all had the same invisible solution? It's a huge idea, right? But the answer might just lie with something so small you can't even see it: proteins. And a recent jump in AI has totally changed the game, giving us the keys to unlock everything from curing cancer to cleaning up the planet. At the heart of all this is something called the protein folding problem. For decades, this was the grand challenge in biology. The goal was simple to state, but almost impossible to achieve. Could you predict a protein's super complex 3D shape just by knowing the simple, one-dimensional string of its building blocks, the amino acids? So why does the shape matter so much? Well, because proteins are basically the microscopic machines that make all life work. Everything from carrying oxygen in your blood to making your muscles move, that's a protein doing its job. And their 3D shape is perfectly built for that one specific task. If the shape is wrong, the machine is broken. You know, it's like a key. If the shape is wrong, it just won't open the lock. Same exact thing for proteins. Now, this quest to see these shapes, it's not some new thing. This has been a 60-year marathon, a race against a level of complexity that is, well, it's almost unimaginable. And the pace of this race was just painfully slow. The very first structure was figured out back in 1958. 20 years later, in 1978, scientists had only managed about 100 more. By 2020, after 6 decades of work from tens of thousands of scientists, the grand total was just 150,000. I mean, just think about that. For so many brilliant people, their entire PhD, years of their life, was spent solving the structure of one single protein. And that first structure? Oh, it was a weird one. John Kendrew figured it out using a giant chunk of whale meat he got from Peru. And when he finally saw the shape, it wasn't some elegant, beautiful thing. It was so weird and complicated that it got nicknamed the turd of the century. But hey, it still won him a Nobel Prize. So why is it so hard? Well, it comes down to something called Levinthal's paradox. The basic idea is that for even a small protein to just randomly try out every single possible way it could fold, it would take longer than the age of the entire universe. I mean, get this. If a protein started folding at the Big Bang, it would still need 200 times the entire history of the cosmos to try every shape. So yeah, just trying to brute force it was never going to work. Okay, so scientists turned to computers. In 1994, they created this global challenge called CASP. Think of it as the Olympics for protein folding prediction. The best and brightest minds in the world would throw their most powerful computer programs at the problem. The finish line, the gold medal, was getting a score over 90. For years and years, nobody even got close. But then, the race took a really unexpected turn. Some new competitors showed up, and they weren't just scientists. We're talking about gamers and a totally new kind of artificial intelligence. They brought brand new ways of thinking to the whole problem. Early on, you had efforts like Rosetta at Home, which used computing power from volunteers' idle computers. But then came something completely different, a video game called Fold It. It actually crowdsourced human intuition. It turned protein folding into a puzzle, and it turned out that our creative puzzle-solving brains could actually find better solutions than the best supercomputers could at the time. And get this, one of those Fold It players was a guy named Demis Hassabis. He was a former child chess prodigy who went on to found the AI company DeepMind. He saw how powerful human intuition was in that game, and he believed he could build an AI that could do it even better. After his AI conquered the game of Go, he aimed it at a much, much bigger target, solving fundamental scientific problems. So in 2018, DeepMind entered CASP with their program AlphaFold 1, and it just blew away the competition. But its score was only around 70, a long way from that magic number of 90. It was a huge win, for sure, but it also felt a little hollow. The team knew they had to go back to the drawing board and completely rethink the problem itself. And this is where the story gets really good. This led to a complete redesign, a true moment of inspiration. This was AlphaFold's aha moment, a completely new way of thinking about how a protein actually takes its shape. The result was AlphaFold 2, a system built from scratch to think more like a biologist would. It used this really clever multi-stage process, and there were two key innovations that let it build and refine its predictions in a way that nothing had ever done before. So the first big idea was a module they called the EvoFormer. The best way to think about it is like having two experts in a room. One is a biologist who knows all about evolution, and the other is a physicist who knows all about shapes. The EvoFormer let these two experts talk to each other, passing clues back and forth 48 times until they finally agreed on a consistent and incredibly accurate picture. The second clever trick was the structure module. Instead of trying to assemble a protein piece by piece in a long chain where one wrong move could mess up the whole thing, AlphaFold 2 treated the protein like a bag of Legos. It could place each piece in roughly the right spot first and then figure out how they all connect. This little trick was brilliant because it kept the AI from getting stuck in a wrong shape. So, fast forward to 2020. DeepMind comes back to CASP, and the results? They were just breathtaking. AlphaFold 2 didn't just win, it completely demolished the competition. It achieved a median score of 92, soaring right past that solved threshold. For the very first time, a computer was as good as years of painstaking lab work. The problem was solved. And don't just take my word for it. The founder of the competition himself, John Molt, he just said it flat out. We'd solved the problem. It was this incredible, historic moment, the end of a scientific quest that had spanned generations. But here's the thing. This historic achievement, it wasn't really an endpoint. In fact, it was the exact opposite. Solving the protein folding problem was like finding a master key, one that would unlock a completely new era of science. So just to put this all in perspective, remember that number from earlier? 150,000. That's how many protein structures the entire global scientific community managed to figure out in over 60 years of hard work. AlphaFold came along and determined 200 million structures, covering pretty much every known protein to science in just a few months. This isn't just a small step forward, you guys. This is a quantum leap. It's a fundamental transformation in how we understand life itself. And this isn't just theory. This new knowledge is already being used out in the real world. We're talking about developing malaria vaccines, fighting antibiotic resistance, designing enzymes that can actually eat plastic, and understanding the mutations that cause cancer. It's like we just put a supercharger on scientific progress in dozens of fields all at once. And now, we're already moving beyond just predicting the proteins that exist. The next frontier is designing completely new ones from scratch. Think about it like having a dolly for proteins. Imagine designing a custom enzyme to pull greenhouse gases out of the air, or a synthetic antivenom that works on any snake bite. That's the world we're heading into. AlphaFold proved that AI isn't just a tool for making things we already do a little bit better. It's a tool for making brand new discoveries, for solving these fundamental problems that have held back human progress for decades. So it leaves us with this one fascinating final question. What grand challenge should we point it at next?
Fuel your curiosity. Subscribe for the explanation. Stay for the knowledge.